In this tutorial, I'll go over how to generate a minimap texture from your World Partition levels. This can be useful for in-game, and it's also very useful for in editor, just to make sure that you don't always have to have everything loaded and you have a visual representation of where you are. I'll go over details of how to set up the bounds of your minimap and how to exclude certain data layers. In this tutorial, I'll just be excluding gameplay actors and also which type of capture we want. So with shadows, final pass, depth pass, and in this case, just diffuse. The texture that's generated, you could take a screenshot and then you can modify as much as you want in Photoshop or Affinity Designer, and then it can be useful for maps in your game or mini maps. For this tutorial, I'll be using the Lyra sample project, and I'm using the 5.41. You could use your own project as well, and as long as you're implementing or using the World Partition in some of your levels, you'll be able to generate a minimap from it. And if you have a level that you're interested in converting to a World Partition level, you can always navigate to Tools and then Convert Level. And this will convert your level to use World Partition. World Partition has been incredibly useful for me for my project because the world can get quite large and it makes sure that you don't always have to have everything loaded. And also it has this really nice feature called one actor per file where they're all saved as separate U assets. So you can modify some actors in the level, push or submit that change into source control, and you can do all that without checking out the level. So there's less toe stepping and it's just really nice to work with. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the map called L_expanse. So this is a map that's already using World Partition. And the first time you open it, you'll see that there is pretty much nothing in the level, or it seems like there's nothing. So that's because it's using the World Partition, and to be able to see it, let's go ahead and navigate to Window, and then I'll go ahead and open the world setting because we'll need that at some point. And then Window, World Partition, and then the World Partition editor. So we can sort of see, we can see that there's already a mini map. It's not the clearest mini map. And this is what we're going to play with. If we want to load actors inside of the World Partition, we can just click, drag to select what we want to load. And this is where the minimap comes in very useful because we can sort of preview what's over there and what we actually want to load in. We could always just select that bounding box. And then I'm going to right click and then click on Load Region from Selection. And then depending on how huge your map is, it will load. It'll just take a little bit of time. Okay, great. So now that the assets have been loaded, you can see all the assets that exist. And yeah, if you select an asset, or let's say I'll select these stairs, and I zoom into the map, I can see exactly where that object is. And when I play, what's nice about this is that it keeps a cursor to where your camera is. So at first I thought it was where the player is, but I looked into the code, and also you can see, I'll just zoom out. Oh, and then right click is to move around. So if I rotate around the player, I guess I'll try to zoom in. So if I rotate around the player, you can see that the cursor is not exactly where the pawn is. Because it sort of rotates around them. So it's the location of the camera or the player viewpoint. If there's nothing showing up here for you, it might just be that you haven't generated the minimap yet. So to do that, what you can do is you can either press on Build and then Build World Partition Editor Minimap, or you can go to the Build menu and then it's under the World Partition. You can build the World Partition Editor Minimap. So I'll go and do it over here, and it'll take a little bit. So for some reason in Lyra, it just turned into gray or just dark? And I looked into it and I noticed that the problem was that it was the sky. The sky don't mesh. It's blocking whatever trace that the minimap is making. So I'm not too sure about the collision presets and whatnot, but what I did for the sake of this tutorial is I just deleted it and then I just replaced it with the sky. So I'm gonna go to adding or replace actor panel, and then I'm gonna search for sky. Okay, I'm just going to drop in the BP sky sphere. Okay, so it changes the mood, but I think this one has different collisions. If anyone has any idea why that one was blocking the minimap traces, then please comment. I'm going to try this again. Okay, so build and then editor minimap. And after that change, now I can actually see my minimap. If you actually have a really huge world and you have some sort of skirt, I think is the term, or some mountains around, or you just want to choose what you want to show in your minimap, there's something called the minimap volume. So again, I'm going to go to the place actor panel and we're going to drag in this World Partition minimap volume. And essentially in the code, if there's no minimap volume, it will use the bounds of your world. So if you have a gigantic world, then it will take a while. So I'm just going to change the location to 0. Okay, there you go. All right, and then I'm going to just make it fit what I actually want to see in my map. So I'm gonna make it bigger, and you can notice that there is also a world underneath the world, and I think it's just a sequence for the background of the Lyra menu. So it probably helps if I have the perspective on top, but I actually want it to be lit so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm gonna make it a little smaller, and this seems pretty good. And then maybe I don't actually want to see the roof, or maybe there's a certain Z value that I don't want. So I'm going to switch over to the front. Oh boy, okay. So there's a basement also. So I'm going to make it tall enough. It's a bit hard to see, but here's my line. Maybe because I can see the grid, it's making it a little hard to see. Okay, there you go. Okay, and then perspective. Maybe I don't want these gray spots, or maybe I do want them. So I've tried to have multiple volumes just to see if I can include specific things, but I have been unsuccessful because it'll just take in the total bounds of every single volume that you add. I'm going to regenerate that map. For a while, my build kept failing, and I look into the details. And by the way, this was the error that I got. So if you ever have this error, it doesn't really tell much. But I looked into the code and it seemed to be something about maybe something that's too small. I more or less stumble upon the solution. So this is the result that I got in the end. As you see, you can't see the roof. You can see the roof over there. It's nice you can define what your minimap is. But yeah, the solution included just making a bigger image. So if you want a clear image, that was part of my video anyways. It's funny, I just ran into this issue right when filming. Okay, so how to fix this? It's funny that this issue only happens when you have a minimap volume, and so it's not taking in the whole world. So for the solution, you can scroll down into your outliner and then get to the World Partition Minimap actor. So this actor only exists in editor, by the way. Same with the volume. So in your minimap actor, in the details panel, make sure to change the world units per pixel to something smaller. So it used to be 50. So essentially, there were 50 world units per pixel. So there was probably some calculation where a mid-map bias was smaller than 0 U, which is, I think, unreal units, which is 1 centimeter. Please correct me if I am wrong. Yeah, so this is also the place where you can set what kind of capture source you want. So this makes for a bigger image. And then here you can choose all these options. So the final color includes shading as well. So it depends on what you want out of this. It even has the scene depth. So maybe there's some textures you can use out of this. So just for fun, I'm going to choose the final color in HDR. That should be okay. And I'm going to go ahead and, or I'll use the other one. I will go to build World Partition Editor Minimap. And I'm going to save this because I changed this actor. All right, so that capture is done. And now you can see all of even the weapon pads, the jump pads and all that. And you can see some shading also. And as you can see, I keep pressing the middle mouse button to navigate, but the middle mouse actually shows you the distance between, or the distance of this line in world units, which is pretty cool. And might as well go through this here. So you can also see the coordinates of your world partition and your grid. So one world partition, it's about 12,800. And if I go to my world settings, you'll see that this is exactly it. So 12,800 or the cell size. So if you ever want to change the cell size of your world, maybe your world is a little smaller but more compact, and you need more streaming in, streaming out control. And if you want to preview your grids, it doesn't do much in this project because it is smaller than even one partition cell. But you can sort of see the faint outline of the gray. And if you have a bigger world, you'll see all the lines all over the place, and they will correspond to each cell. Back at your World Partition minimap, I'm going to click on that, and let's just say that we don't actually want anything of the gameplay to show up on the map. So the world is set up really nicely in this project, that it uses data layers. And in your World Partition minimap actor, you can actually set some data layers to exclude from the capture of the minimap. So I'm going to add an element, and then I'm going to choose the gameplay. So I'm going to exclude the gameplay data layer. So what is this? This is the data layer called gameplay. Gonna go ahead and click on window, and then World Partition, and then the data layers outliner. I haven't even looked into the content bundles outliner. Curious about what that is. But let's go ahead and click the data layers outliner. And I'm going to drag it to the right of my outliner. All right. So all of these are ways of organizing your world partition actors into some groups. So for example, if I toggle the gameplay off, I can't see any of the gameplay actors. And I think the ground is also part of the gameplay. Interesting. Okay, layout model A is different than also getting rid of the lighting. Oops. Oh yeah, I guess I can also just select the eye to see or to hide. And there's also some extra spawn, which I'm not exactly sure what it is. If you're not sure what stuff is, you can always right click on it and then select actors in data layer. I guess I also have to include them. So right click, select actors, and then press F just to see. Ah, okay, there's extra spawn points. interesting. I guess if you have even more than however many characters or players there are in this map. So I'm just gonna turn that off for now, leave it how it was. So yeah, if ever you wanted specific things that you want to exclude from the minimap, I think you can add actors to multiple data layers. I might need to double check that, but that's one easy way to exclude specific actors from your minimap capture. So now if I do the minimap capture again, all of this nice color will disappear. So I'm just gonna build. Okay, so this is the result. You can't see anything that is in the gameplay data layer. So you could put a bunch of different data layers that you want to ignore or exclude. All of this, what it creates is this virtual texture, which is virtual, it's not saved on disk, and it also itself is editor only because it is part of an editor only actor. So it's useful for editor, but if you want to use it to create a minimap or a gameplay minimap, you can't use it directly unless we have some sort of script or plugin where we can just save this inside of a U asset or a texture. Sort of like my thumbnail to texture plugin tool. So it's possible, but at the same time, maybe you want to just add some flair to it, give it some style in some other editor like Photoshop or Affinity Designer, which is my favorite so far. I've used it to update my Steam capsules and it was awesome. But yeah, so this is the minimap texture that it generated, and it's elongated. It's because it uses this, it pads to the power of 2. So I'm gonna select none. Okay, and then we have our texture. So what you can do is you can try to full screen it, put it on a 4K maybe, and where the white border is where it ends. And this is your world accurate minimap. And if ever you want to use it in your game, and I might make a follow-up tutorial about this, but you actually have your minimap volume and your position will correspond to the player location. So you can always keep that ratio and then have it in a map somewhere in your game. For now, because this is purely a virtual texture and it only exists as a actor, there's unfortunately no way to just straight up export this to a texture. You can use print screen, green shot, or whichever tool you prefer. If it's useful, I could probably make a tool to export it to a texture. But for now, I think even for myself, this is sufficient. Just doing a screen capture and then adding some pizzazz and some other software. But one more thing I'd like to share for the usefulness of this in editor is that if you have a really big world and you are only working on a specific area, or you can add these actors that are called location, just location volume. And as the comment says, they represent a location of the world used for World Partition loading regions. So I'm just going to drag this in. And let's say that this is just one of the lobbies and you're an artist that is arting up this area. And let's say that this is a huge world and your computer's already sweating. So you might just want to load this little area. Okay, so I am actually looking at it from this way. So I'm going to name this one lobby, maybe blue players. So maybe what you want to do is you want to unload everything. And then what's nice about this is that you could have multiple of these. So I'll just duplicate that, Alt and drag. And then this one I'll call it lobby red players. Okay. And then now with this nice detailed map, I think it would be probably more helpful to have the diffuse only maybe. I'm finding this interesting because it's not accurate. Okay, so after rebuilding it, it has the proper transform location. Maybe I did something weird, probably just because I changed it from the power of 2. So it was fitting all weird. So yeah, okay, so now back to this. If I select everything and I will try to just unload everything. And I don't actually need to see the coordinates anymore. Yeah, so if I'm just working on the lobby for blue players, or maybe a garden if you're making an awesome chill game, you can right-click or select this particular location, and then you can load just this region. Yeah, and then you can work and your computer will be less taxed. And it's nice because you can see through the mini-map where you want to load things. You know, you can gauge distances, and you can also shift double click to play from a certain location. It doesn't exactly work with the expanse level. Or, oh, well, that seemed to work fine. So I'll stop that. Nice. It'll be easy to just start from any location on the mini map. If you want to quickly test a certain area, you don't have to move around in the map. You can have a... Oh, there's the problem. Okay, so some of the spots you can still land on the top of the building, and then you can't really do much. But yeah, in your game, if you don't have those invisible blocking volumes, then you're probably fine. I'm gonna stop this. But yeah, I'm finding the mini-map incredibly useful. In my own game, I have used it as just a map, because I am not personally a fan of maps in games. It can be useful for like Metrovanias for sure, but let's say I'm really enjoying Life of P and that one does not have a map and I feel way more immersed. Yeah, I'll show a little tidbit of how I'm using the mini-map in my game. Okay, so the world, or the hub world of my game, is actually really big, so I should follow my own advice and make a mini-map that represents where the player can go. But yeah, that's what it looks like in editor. And then when I play, and I have everything loaded, even though I don't need to load every single area, but I have a really strong computer. Okay, so in my game, I've implemented a very simple map. It's not it's not pretty yet, but there is her location is marked by a little mushroom, and then the location of her teleport station or umbrella stations is marked by an icon. And I haven't implemented the back action on keyboard and mouse yet, but I have it on the gamepad. I have a cheat to activate on my stations, and it's nice because whenever I have a gameplay object, I can easily set its position relative to the world and to the 2D representation of the map or the world. So in this case, it's nice to use for teleporting. Yay! So this is just how I implemented teleportation and maps in my game. If there's a want for that, it might be fun to try to make a tutorials about mini-maps in the HUD. If not, then I might just do one for just showing the player location, because that can be useful if ever you're lost in a game. As always, thank you for watching and see you in the next one.